Good evening, colleagues, viewers online, fellow Jamaicans, friends of Jamaica. I'm pleased to welcome you to the High Commissioner's event in celebration of International Men's Day, which is being held under the theme Helping Men and Boys Zero Male Suicide. Today's event will explore the challenges men and boys face with mental health, wellness, and other issues resulting in suicide. Today's speakers bring with them a wealth of experience and knowledge in various disciplines, and we look forward to their insightful views and solutions to this global problem of male suicide. Without further ado, I would like to invite His Excellency Alexander Williams, High Commissioner of Jamaica, to provide remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Jamaican High Commission. Let me begin by acknowledging Mr. Kwame McPherson, the award-winning author, Mr. Nathaniel P. entrepreneur and member of the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council, Mr. Courtney Brown, CEO of Father to Father, and moderator Mr. Lawrence Gilchrist, and of course, members of staff. Mr. Livingston. Yes, sir. Lawrence, yes, and members of staff of the Jamaican High Commission, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to extend warm welcome to you as we highlight and celebrate International Men's Day 2023. The theme this year is Helping Men and Boys Zero Male Suicide, with a focus on the disproportionately high suicide rate among young men, not just in Jamaica, but around the world. But before we proceed, let me share with you some background on the origin of International Men's Day. On the 19th November 1999, International Men's Day was established by Dr. Jerome Tilok Singh, a history professor at the University of West Indies in Trinidad and Tobago. Therefore, International Men's Day owes its existence to one of our distinguished West Indian institutions. In the initial years, International Men's Day received tremendous support in the Caribbean. Due to the diligent networking and invitations sent to individuals and organizations in other countries, International Men's Day has now grown on the international scene. International Men's Day is meant to highlight men's experiences and further understanding of the issues they face as they navigate manhood. Unfortunately, suicide is one psychosocial issue that has a particular masculine face. As you all know, suicide is a very complex and sensitive issue, with many factors combining to push someone to take such drastic action. As a result, it's a mistake to make generalizations about such a difficult issue. Around the world, the suicide rate among men is almost 3 times that of women. In Jamaica, in 2022, 90% of suicide cases were men. So we can see that this issue disproportionately affects men, making it an important issue to address on International Men's Day. In the United Kingdom, approximately 6,000 people take their own lives each year, with men accounting for around 3/4 of all suicides in the United Kingdom. Suicide continues to be a problem in Jamaica. More Jamaicans are committing suicide, with the latest data showing a 26% increase in the number of persons who took their lives in 2022 compared with the previous year. However, according to the latest Jamaican figures published in the Economic and Social Survey by the Planning Institute of Jamaica, the country's rate of just over 2 per 100,000 of the population remains well below the global average of 9.2 per 100,000. That said, there's no reason for complacency. The report said 64 suicides were recorded in 2022, moving up from 51 in 2021. Males accounted for an alarmingly high 90.6% of victims. So I'm going to now hand over to our moderator and special guest who obviously know more than I about the topic for more insights into this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And to our esteemed panel members, JA High Commission staff, colleagues, I am privileged to be here to moderate. This topic is not only close to my heart, but I believe close to everyone's heart, given that we have lost loved ones, colleagues, associates, friends, and we shouldn't underplay the reality of what this is. The person across from you, next to you, in your home, in your office, in your workplace, could be that person that is going through personal challenges, deep embedded trauma. They're trying to make sense of the world. And given that, we don't know. Why? Because men, we are known to hold back. As a fellow Jamaican, I will say, I know the way I have been raised is the way many of us have been raised. To be strong, to be robust, to be the leader, to always find the answer to questions when posed, but are we able to? We're just human. And sometimes that burden of responsibility, just to fit in, just to survive, just to thrive, and be the provider, can be overwhelming. And as a result, we struggle. As men, we struggle. So this panel discussion will address a number of things that are relevant, that are pertinent, that are urgent, and ultimately, I genuinely believe that with our panel members and with you, the audience out there, who we welcome you to send your questions through in the chat section, and our colleagues here will monitor and will be able to respond to those later in this session. So having said that, without further ado, let me introduce our esteemed panel members. We have two that are physically here and one gentleman who's online. So in no particular order, as the saying goes, let me introduce our first panel member, Mr. Nathaniel Peat, to my left. Nathaniel Peat is a multi-award-winning entrepreneur, patron, international speaker, chairman, business coach, and a man of many talents and achievements. He has been featured in Forbes magazine, is listed on the 2018 Empower Financial Times list, and 2017 saw an entry into the Black Power list and the Financial Times Upstanding 100 BNE executive list. As you can see, a high achiever, an esteemed person, there's more. He currently sits on the Black Advisory Board for the Lloyds Banking Group, is chairman of Brunel Business School, Global Jamaica Diaspora Council Representative, Consultative Advisor to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade in Jamaica, and patron of EY Foundation. Despite his many achievements, his most compelling trait has been his dedication to helping young people and offenders rise and make a positive difference in their own lives, as well as in the lives of others in their community. Mr. Nathaniel Peat, thank you for being here. Alongside myself, to my right, another esteemed gentleman, Kwame M.A. McPherson, is the Commonwealth Short Story Prize for 2023 for his story, Okosi. Okohi. I love this as our real life. Okohi, named after the Florida town and site of a brutal racist attack in 1920. He entered prize for the 7th time this year and triumphed. Over 6,641 entries worldwide. How should we do that? He entered the prize for the 7th time. That's what perseverance means. And this year triumphed over 6,641 entrants worldwide. That is in itself an achievement. And if we look for role models, to my left, to my right, and where to my left, all the way across the table, of course, there are many role models here. And to conclude on Kwame's reference, he's a prolific writer, content organizer, ghostwriter, authorpreneur, book mentor, and orator. Mr. Kwame M.A. reference. The first Jamaican to also which is itself another major achievement. Thank you, Father. And finally, we have our third panel member, a Mr. Courtney Brown, a gentleman I've known for several years. He is the founder, CEO of Father to Father, Vice Chair, Open Minds Alliance, Trustee of Mind in Haringey, the borough in which I live, and a short movie producer, Me, My Father, and Mental Health. Although the bio is brief, it does not fully express Courtney's personal achievements, some of which I'm sure Courtney will bring out in today's discussion. So those are our panel members, and what I will do, I will navigate the journey of this discussion by being moderator. And before I begin, I'd just like to give some background in terms of what we're discussing today. Healthy men and boys, zero male suicide. It's worth acknowledging two important events on the annual calendar. Number one, Mental Health Awareness Week, which took place in May of this year, and of course every year. The theme of Mental Health Awareness Week in this year was anxiety, another important element that greatly influences what we'll be discussing shortly. The second date worth recognizing is International Men's Day, which takes place this coming Sunday, 19th of November. Hence why we're here today in what we refer to also as International Men's Week. The global awareness day for many issues that men face, including parental alienation, abuse, homelessness, violence, and ultimately suicide. So I'm going to be speaking less and giving my panel members the opportunity to speak more. And as a courtesy to Courtney, who is online, I will go to you first, Courtney, because I'll pose the same questions to all panel members and also everyone can actually contribute as you go forward. So, Courtney, how important is it? First of all, thank you for being online. I appreciate it. So how important is it that we acknowledge these events that I've mentioned, and why are they relevant to you personally?
First of all, thank you, and I'd like to say honour the High Commissioner first for inviting me, the High Commissioner for inviting me, and to say hello to all my brothers on there. I wish I could be with you today, but I just literally got back from delivering a session in a primary school in Haringey, so unfortunately I wasn't able to make it today. As you said, it's the Courtney Brown, CEO of Father to Father, and I just want to say something. My greatest achievement is one, being here today, but two, being a husband and a father of 4 boys. That's my greatest achievement. Yeah, being a husband, a father of 4 boys, and you know, and being a man of God as well is my greatest achievement. And I say that because when I talk about my titles aren't me. I am me, my identity and what I live for and my purpose. So that's why my introduction was very short, because I am me. My titles, my labels don't mean nothing if I haven't got my boys, my wife and my God. So that's the first thing. And that's a lot to me in terms of my upbringing, growing up in Tottenham and, you know, and so forth, understanding my identity. Why, to your question, why is it important? Father to Father's been going for 10 years. And one thing I've identified in the 10 years, and don't get me wrong, it's got a lot better, is that men, fathers, have been excluded in a lot of places in terms of institutions. And quite rightly, yes, we need to talk about our women and our children, but, you know, it took two. And speaking to men that I've worked in the last 10 years, they have felt excluded. So if you feel excluded and you're not included, how does that make you feel? Where's your purpose? Where do you sit in life? So for me, celebrating International Men's Day is about highlighting the men that are contributing in the homes, contributing to society, but go unseen, those unspoken heroes. And that's what it means a lot to me too. And obviously raise, you know, talk about the issues that we're going to be talking about tonight. So that's one thing I would bring to the table. My experience, my first experience of mental health was through my dad. And my dad came from Argos-town, Jamaica. And, you know, came to Haringey, Tottenham in the 60s. And, you know, experienced what he experienced, police brutality. There was no culturally competent organization to support his anger back then. And, you know, Kwame knows my family very well. So, you know, we've talked about this, no culturally competent to support his anger. So he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. So can you imagine for me as a young man growing up in Tottenham, whose dad was very notorious, yeah, going to see his dad in an institution at the age of 13, where he was my role model. So when I mean going to see him and then they've just ejected him and he's bloated up, walking slow from the image that I remember him. So that was very traumatizing for me at the age of 13, but I didn't know it was trauma then and so forth. So that was my first encounter with mental health. And then the other thing, as a young man growing up in Tottenham, knowing how notorious my dad was, but then the stigma of mental health. So walking around Tottenham and all of the names, madman, this, that, lunatic. Again, this is why this is important to talk up, to break down the stigma. And as you mentioned earlier before, it can happen to any of us at any time, which it did. It happened to me. So it personally, me at the age of 21, broke up, had a breakdown, break up with my son's mum. So my son must have been 9 months. She started going out with another guy, and going to see them while that guy there at the age of 21, it hurt me. I was in pain. I always say to people on West Green Road, Tottenham, if you know West Green Road, Tottenham, that road there could tell a lot of stories of me at the age of 21, leaving that house where the two people that I loved the most, yeah, and I wasn't with them. So I tell you, I cried on West Green Road. It's got all my tears down there. Why? Because all I wanted was the family unit that I didn't experience growing up. So that was depression then. Many years later, my next bout of depression and anxiety was when I walked into my son, my 6-year-old son. He's 14 now, but he was 6. And I walked into his primary school and I saw the white male head teacher pinning him to the floor, a 6-year-old boy. That really traumatized me, which then took me to counseling and therapy, which then helped me to understand my childhood trauma, my adverse childhood experiences, you know. And this is the experience a lot of Black men and Black families have over here in England in terms of, you know, Kwame talked about racism. Racism is also a trigger to mental health and trauma. So obviously I've done a lot of work on myself. As I said, I'm a trustee for Mind, the vice chair of Open Mind Alliance, which is a strategic board that speaks to power. And when I say it speaks to power, we speak to policy. We highlight organizations that are African Caribbean organizations that are dealing with mental health and suicide, and we give them a voice. So those are the two examples of me experiencing my experience of mental health, suicide, which I should have mentioned. You know, when I was 21, I did have suicidal thoughts, but nobody knew that because I couldn't talk about it. Why couldn't I talk about it? Because of my experience of what the community spoke about my dad. Because those things live with you. but I thank God Almighty that I've been able to go through my experiences, come out at the other end. And I want to say I've come out fully, but I'm doing the work on myself. But I use Father to Father as a platform to raise the awareness, but also provide solutions for our community. It's for me, it's about healing and empowerment of the community.
Thank you so much. And that was quite emotive. And that's our reality. When we are able to express ourselves in a manner that is truthful, genuine, authentic, people feel it. It's not just about hearing it, people feel it. And given that, Courtney, I really appreciate you taking the time to share your journey, share your story. Let me now move on to Nathaniel, your thoughts on the same question in terms of how important is that we acknowledge these events, mental health, and also National Men's Day. And why are they relevant to you personally?
Yeah, I mean, it's really so important to celebrate men and boys, because oftentimes they're not celebrated. In the classroom, in particular for Black boys, they're 3 times more likely to be expelled from school. They're more likely to go into pupil referral unit. They're more likely to end up in prison. I mean, the work that we do at the Safety Box, we work with over 25,000 young people. 90% of those are being Black boys who are working in the prison. It's the same thing, Black men. And I think because we don't have enough men that are celebrated, both through the faith networks of churches, there's a lot of women, there's not many men in the congregation. And so where the men are doing outstanding work, they're not celebrated enough. Men are told not to show emotion at a young age. Man up, you're strong, you're not weak, come on now, toughen up yourself and, that's the type of, thing that we've had drilled into us from young years. Within our communities, there's been abusive households whereby, children have been beaten to the extent where it's not just discipline, it's actually abuse. My journey growing up in Tottenham as well, having, situations I've seen, youth violence when I was growing up. In fact, I used to hang out with Courtney's cousin. But, just being in a very, dynamic system of racism, growing up in probably one of the, largely, heavily, in fact, Jamaican diaspora communities in North London, whereby growing up through the 1985 riots, whereby you saw the murder of Joy Gardner, and you should, within my classroom, experiencing issues with my teacher with the racism, then me being pulled into low-level criminality as a young person, experiencing stabbings and seeing people beat on the road and their heads slammed on the concrete, and then seeing my friends being murdered, whereby, with even, I'm gonna mention this one's name, Popcorn. Popcorn got killed at 16. And then the road wars between Hackney and Tottenham during the time, all of that was trauma for me growing up. But I think probably the greatest trauma that I ever faced was the breakdown of my first marriage, when I had to fight through a legal system to be with my son. My son was born in the marriage. He was a baby when we split up. And being told by the court, because of lies entered into a system whereby men don't have, and at the time didn't have justice for Black men in particular. I was told that I would be able to see my son. I could only see him for 2 hours in a contact center with a social worker every other week. And having to fight against a system that did not really champion men. That was an incredible trauma. The experience of infidelity within the marriage, the issues that I faced in terms of abuse within the marriage as well. That really traumatized me heavily. So much so whereby I had to wear a cloak of courage. Every time I went to an event or every time I went to a function, because when you're doing entrepreneur, you're a young entrepreneur coming up, you're at events, you're doing things. And having to wear a cloak of courage every time I went out, but then leaving a board meeting to go and cry in the toilet and then coming back in. Having a situation whereby I'm losing my business because of the legal procedures of divorce and having my business go down to zero and shutting my company down, losing my income and going through incredible pain of still fighting the legal system and those papers which came through the door which said, if I attempt to see my son outside the contact hours, I'll be put in prison. A penal situation. So that's why it's so important for me. And I had to do 5 years worth of therapy to get out of that. That mental strain of dealing with the onslaught of incredible depression. And when I encountered that mental health crisis, I collapsed. And it was only through the faith which I had in God, whereby when I was blanking out, I had to just think on these things, before. And in my mind, when I grayed out, I heard this voice say to me, just hold on to me and let go of the situation. And that helped me to get out. And, so these things are very, very important for us to speak about. And also the tools which we need to actually get your mind back into a place where you can function. So that's why these two topics are very, very important in both Men's International Men's Day, as well as the topic of mental health and anxiety, because it's real to me, and the journey which I've been through has been significant to get me to the place where I am now, which is another power of trauma therapy and the power of actually, the therapeutic processes to get you back up.
Thank you so much. Again, quite emotive and deeply personal. And the thing to recognize is that everyone has a story. Everyone has a story. And are we able to express, are we able to articulate? And the answer is the opportunity is there, and not everyone takes it, because of those same limitations or restrictions that we feel are imposed upon us. Kwame, you're forcing the question. The question is, how important is it that we acknowledge the events that are Mental Health Awareness Week and International Men's Day, and why are they relevant to you personally?
All right, so it is important. I just finished on Jamaica this morning, so I'm going to talk about the Jamaican country.
Yes.
All right. I think it's like Jamaica has a tradition and a history of coming out of enslavement and colonialism, where men were seen as, the stalwarts of the family, were seen as the stalwarts of the community. And within that, it has caused a situation where men can't be emotive, are not shown to be emotive. They shouldn't be seen to be emotive. And this has caused an internalization of being of pain and stressing. I know that in my personal journey, I experienced that. I experienced the childhood trauma between my father and mother when there was violence. I remember hiding under the table in the kitchen, but even though it was there, but what happened is that it carried closer. So what I mean here, I mean, growing up here, I do that as well, I grew up for a while. And then having the discussion with my father around that and how it impacted upon me and young health. And I remember I remember going back to Jamaica once, and just prior to him passing away, and I said, we went to country, we went to Portland. And I said, Dad, something, I really doing that. I said, Dad, some images now that I've made, and I talked to her. I said, I remember, the pilot for Virginia more, and as a child, I remember hiding under the table in the kitchen, and I see with violence. And at the time, my dad looked at me and said, no, man, I'm home, you don't watch. I don't know that. I remember what I saw, and I know how traumatizing it has been for me throughout my life and how that impacted my relationship with my life. And that doesn't mean I love being a lesson. I said, you grew up in a time where these things were accepted, but you grew up in a time where you're a product of your environment, So I accept that. And I understand that. But for me, it's my way of healing in terms of being open with him to understand where I was coming from. So what we find in the Jamaican context is that there's a lot of pain, a lot of trauma that we haven't come to recognize, that we haven't come to deal with. And one of the things I'm fortunate enough to be mentioned at my alma mater, and it's a boys' school. And the thing is, when I'm reading with these young men are carrying things with them. But when the beautiful thing that even though I'm a mentor, they have a male teacher. And the relationship that they have with the male teacher is so wonderful to see, because they would talk to him and they would talk to them, you know, because deal with them in the way like I'm on with you, you know, but it can get to them, or the connection, the engagement. And I found that being in that space with these young men, we have a connection also, you know, we've been able to build a rapport and get to understand them and get to understand where they're coming from in terms of the community environment, in terms of the family home. And we try to find ways of getting them to express. So one of the tools that we use, which is creative, but you know, I'm a writer, is poetry. And we're going to, and, you know, and being in the space with the young men, and the poems that they write and have written is mind-blowing. You know what I mean? They talk about the job, they talk about growing up in a single home, they talk about the political environment, they talk about everything. So these are young men, intelligent young men, bright young men, you know what I mean? And I think this is where we need to capture them dealing with the 11s, because their experience, what they're experiencing about, because, you know, like I said, I've been able to relate and to have that relationship. So the days and the acknowledgement of those days is important. And unfortunately, I haven't seen anything in terms of that in Jamaica. That's in terms of and the emphasis of it. So I haven't seen like how, you know, we have this discussion here at the commission. I haven't seen that. I'm not saying that happen. I haven't seen it. You know what I mean? And so it's important that and something that Courtney had mentioned actually, which is we're working on an international project, a partnership project, a collaboration called Sleepy Mountain in Jamaica. And it's around men and mental health. Yeah, so we're looking to have an international conference this year. So that's something to look forward to around the same issue. So can we recognize that they're connected to that? You know, there's issues here, you know, amongst African, Caribbean, and boys, and you know, and it's even happening today. So we want to really go forward so we can get everybody to get that discussion. And celebrate, as you said before, we highlighted the initial question. So in terms of my personal view, there have been things that probably come up as we continue the discussion. And talk about, you know what I mean, you know, the things that we can go deeper. So what happened
Excellent, thank you very much, Connie. And before I move on in the discussion, I think it's important that we also have some context from a governmental perspective. So, you know, some excellence in your thoughts on the topic.
All right, let me see if I can collect my thoughts on this. It is true that government policy has not targeted the well-being of men. And the truth of it is that if you look at it historically, women have been disadvantaged in the society for a particular long stretch of time. And government policy, if I were to pick a decade, maybe the 70s or then started to gear itself towards protecting women's economic rights, women's access to education, keeping their job whilst they are pregnant, making sure that they have equal opportunities. All right, and it's the workplace with equal pay and all of that. So there's a slew of legislation that was, you don't mind me saying so, trying to steer Jamaica away from the 19th century view of women as chattels. Yes. Now, we need to pivot at some point and recognize the hurt, the challenges that face men and their position in society. All right. Interestingly, Professor Miller I might just say to you, recently I have launched a book right here at the Jamaican High Commission, posited a theory about the marginalization of men in society. And it has got to a point where it is manifested anecdotally, and I'm thinking of my own two daughters now, manifested anecdotally in them not seeing a suitable life partner out there for their kids. You know, my eldest daughter is an attorney at law. It's hard for her to go out there and interface with a suitable person at their level. Right, so the dating scene isn't that great. And I see my younger daughter having the same sort of issues. Yes. A friend of mine, you know, single woman, who went and well, single woman, professional, and all of that. And say the only men she comes across her doors are washing her car outside. Just to say that, you know, that's so what has happened, because there wasn't societal governmental attention given to the plight of men, following upon the readjustment to protect women, where we are now. You know? So the Bureau of Gender Affairs, I know, balances or tries to balance out the issues as between men and women. Legislation that's come to the fore in all different spheres tries to be gender neutral in order to protect the rights of both men and women. So I like to say in other contexts that the arc of justice, the arc tends to bend towards justice over time. You know, things seem to go that way. And to my mind, I think it's bending towards the protection of men's rights. It is recognized by the government, long in coming, long in the tooth, but I see individual steps being taken in terms of government policy and legislation to deal with men's rights. So that's my contribution.
Thank you very much, and very much appreciated. And that one of the things that we will recognize is that there is a responsibility on men to lead by example. As our speakers have said, you know, Courtney, Nathaniel, Harley, the role of our fathers is fundamental, absolutely fundamental in how we govern ourselves, how we develop as young men, as Courtney will again share to the work he's doing, how boys develop into men. I could go into detail, but I won't at this time because I'm more about the facilitation. However, there is similarities in myself and my father. I'm very proud Jamaican man. And by virtue of that, I became a very proud Jamaican man. I, like you, I have two daughters, both of whom I love dearly and will do anything for, but at the same time,
You're a shotgun about
a shotgun. When it comes to any gentleman, and I use this term deliberately, any gentleman that steps to my daughters, they have to represent. You know? And my duty of care as father, as mentor, as role model is to ensure that my daughter's best interests come first.
It's you know, man,
Please
it's so interesting that you say that, because as a father, I must tell you, I found myself, I don't know how I ended up, being a kind of mentor to some of those boyfriends that were checking us. You know, trying to, you know, give them advice and things to do and don't do that, do this, and so on and so forth. So much so sometimes I would complain that I'm becoming a friend of the boyfriend. But you can't, when you can't help, and I'm sure it must be for all of you. You can't help but be a mentor. Yes. To a young man in your space or what have you. It just I know for me, it flows always because I'm a father, it flows naturally. If you see a young man around you, you want to guide. I'm going to share a little something personal here now. Let me share something personal. My nephew, recently passed on, right? And he was taken at a young age of 35. And I was his second father. Right? His career is, I am there pushing him ahead, helping him out in my own office space, giving him the guidance and what have you. So there's no a hole for me. I can tell you this. There's a hole there now, no longer there. And I don't know how my brother, his father, or his managing and dealing with that, suppose I'll find it very soon. But for me, the uncle, there's a hole. Yes. You know? And he had his own trauma, you know? And I know he was dealing with the trauma. So the key thing is, first, you must be aware of it. Yes, that's right. Something you can go years, as you mentioned, you can go years and not realize that you're suffering from trauma. Until there's a sudden wake-up call or something happens and it's over. You know, and you realize, and once you have that recognition, then you can take steps to deal with it, the depression, the anger, the a tendency towards violence. Then you can deal with it once you identify the trauma. And I think that is the takeaway. Identifying that you have suffered from trauma, and then being, and when you use the word, man enough to take the next step now, to pull yourself away from it, right? To cauterize whatever destructive behavior you may have be contemplated. Yeah.
Thank you. And quite timely that you shared that, because we need to look at the causes of suicide, and by virtue of that, how we can identify, how we can discuss, explore, resolve, and address. Now, we're here primarily to discuss suicide awareness and prevention, in particular amongst men and boys. It has been stated quite clearly in terms of percentage in Jamaica and here in the UK, globally, those who, and I use the term lose, not take, but lose their lives. I use the word lose deliberately because this is as a result of all that internalized trauma and the burdens that they're carrying when they eventually say, that's it. Why is it that it impacts more men than women? We can't dismiss the fact that women lose their lives also. And why is it that it impacts more men than women? Courtney, I'd like to come to you now, if I may. Thank you for raising your hand, and of course you have.
Yeah. So it's just want to go back a little bit before I address that, my brother. So one thing I was writing down is that we talk about trauma, and yes, trauma's there, but as much as we need to talk about how we interventions around suicide, I'm always about prevention. Yeah. So I see my journey as actually, I see things, I hear things. So that's seeing, hear, but actually, when I look at my emotions, where have I got safe spaces to go and talk to? Where have our boys got safe places to talk to, where they see men, whether it's their fathers, uncle, grandfathers, are expressing themselves through the emotions. And that's what I do with my son, because the key thing for me is to name the emotion to my son so he can then relate to it. But then he sees his dad modeling the behavior to deal with it. And so that's one of the key things I say to everybody in my workshops, that we have to listen, acknowledge, and the key thing is to acknowledge it, because my emotion and their emotions are, their story is real to them. So who am I to tell them their story is not real? So acknowledge it. but then model the behavior that I expect as a father for my sons, and modeling the behavior the boys or the men are working in the community I expect. Because if you've come from a house where you've not seen it, how do you know it? Yeah. So when we're talking about emotions, we're talking about sadness, we're talking about frustration. How do you talk about those things in a safe space and not be judged and not be told, man up? Put that. No, the key thing is talk about it, but don't live in it. So that's the thing that I've kind of seen through my 10 years, that let's talk about it. Let's normalize those emotions with our boys, because if we normalize it with our boys, they become men, then they become husbands, and then they become fathers. But it's been normalized. Does that make sense? Am I explaining myself well?
Yes, absolutely. And again, I'll stay with you for a moment. The question also was, why is it more prevalent amongst men?
Goes back to the same thing. We're not talking about it. We're holding it in.
Yes.
Yeah, we're holding it in. We're not being vulnerable enough. What me talk to that man about my feelings? What, so they can hold it against me? Yeah, all of those things are playing out in our head. When I'm Kwame, sorry, I called him Mackie, but Kwame and Nathaniel knows I'm a book. I'm an open book. People can't chat me, you know. You know why? Because I chat myself. Yeah. So then nobody has anything over me because I'm open, I'm vulnerable, I'm transparent, I'm authentic. And you know what? When you're like that, you then give others the permission to be like that. And that's why I put it in my movie, Me, My Father, and Mental Health, because I was open, authentic, vulnerable, cried in it. What? Because I cried. That don't make me a man. So that's for me what it is. Yeah, we hold it in, and then when we and the key thing, Nathaniel, you will know this. You hold it in, and one man just step on your white trainers, and then I'll kill you now. Yeah, or one man brush past you, or and I could talk freely, or my wife says something to me, and because back in the day, let me say this is back in the day, I'm blowing up. Yeah, because of the fight I'm having out in the community. So I've had to learn how to understand that emotion. I'm frustrated, I'm overwhelmed. Actually, what do I need to do? Let me go to the gym. Let me listen to my music. Let me go and pray. Let me listen to a sermon. Let me walk out the house. Let me stable myself and then come in and deal with because the thing is, it feeds, that energy feeds into your family. My sons could pick it up. My wife could pick it up. So it's my responsibility to understand how I do with my emotions, find the right places to go and talk, get it out, and come in with a nice head so I can be the husband and the father they deserve.
Connie, thank you for that.
It's thought occurred to me because we haven't been allowed to breathe. I would say, and because we have been functioning or dysfunctioning actually, and just by routine, by doing what we do, you know what I mean, every day in, day out, but we haven't been allowed to breathe. We haven't been able to breathe for the longest while. Yeah, and funny enough, the past, when we had those pandemic years, they actually forced us to stop, reflect, and breathe. And that's where a lot of dysfunction came to the fore, because we weren't allowed to do that from before. You understand? And the same thing we're talking about in regard to having the time to reflect, you know, having the space to talk, having the space to have those self-analysis in terms of who you are, why you're here, the relationship you have around it, and so on and so forth. But because we are dealing with so much, we don't do that. We put that in the back burner. You know, and then it catches up with us. And we explode. And then, you know, to manifest the other negativity and the cause of that. So having this kind of forum helps in terms of enabling those who can seeking a way, seeking a signpost, to understand that you do need time to reflect, you do need time to stop and to look and to analyze and to see where you have been the common denominator in particular things, whether it's a relationship or whether it's the stress that you carry, you know, I mean, all those kind of things that we don't do, you know, we don't do. So that's the men couldn't go way back and we do a lot of work together. And we have seen.
Love you, my brother.
I love you too, man. And there's great things that we're going to be doing going forward. But like I said, it's about being able to breathe.
Yeah.
You know, and we have been able to breathe for the longest while.
Yes, thank you for that. And again, rather than me adding to, I'd like to bring Nathaniel in because again, on the same topic, Nathaniel, in terms of why it's been prevalent amongst men than women, the work that you do, not just with those who are incarcerated, but also outside the prisons.
Yeah.
What has been your experience and therefore your insight potentially share with us on that front?
Yeah, well, I mean, you see, women naturally share amongst themselves.
Yeah.
They naturally talk amongst them. They've got their sister, they've got that community of friends that they oftentimes will offload into for advice or for opinions, or even just for the sake of speaking. Whereas men, oftentimes, we have been conditioned, both through the family, but it definitely within the diaspora, through compounded trauma.
Yes.
I'm speaking about the trauma of those who came on Windrush, and the thing that's drilled into the young generation that were perhaps born in Jamaica, came over to England when they're 1 or 2, but they're British, but they're Jamaican. But then they're speaking back into them. You've got to work 2 times as hard, or you've got to work 3 times as hard to get to that job or to do that.
Yeah.
And so there's always this thing that men, you know, through a narrative of I would say an exponential the feministic ideal, which has been detrimental, in fact, to black men, I would say, in terms of this narrative that black men are dogs or black men are this or that. But they're not understanding that it is because of the traumas that were in them that caused that. So where you do have men which do not want to fit into that narrative, they perhaps may be trying to be strong for the sake of society's pressures, and therefore do not want to show their weakness or vulnerability, when they encounter trauma. And trauma is such a complex thing. I mean, the limbic system is a part of the brain that we call the seat of consciousness. Within the limbic system, you have the amygdala. The amygdala records all of these negative traumas. It doesn't necessarily record the incident, so to speak, but it records the emotions and the feelings. And you see what happens if that is not rewired through the neural pathways that you can get through some of the things that Courtney was talking about in terms of going to the gym or going forward or talking to somebody or listening to music or writing down the trauma onto paper. What happens is when you do encounter something which is similar to that initial trauma that you initially faced as a child when dad went to go and hit you, or that trauma triggers them, and then the adrenaline secretion in the blood system shuts down the left hemisphere, the logical part of the brain, and the right hemisphere, which is the visual side, which is the energetic side, then comes out and manifests. And so working within the several gang members, the several young people that have been involved in violence, both in the custodial setting and the community, we find that they've got these traumas that are wired into this part of the brain. And so it's important for us to then have the appropriate person to work with them. When I say appropriate, I'm talking about the credible messenger. It's not just about having the psychologist that basically does not have the cultural competency of the community, doesn't look like them in terms of their color. In fact, it's the wrong gender. Because within the school system in England, black children are taught by white teachers. That are female. They don't even have black. We're more girls in schools. So when you get the incredible messenger, which is somebody that has a lived experience, has a cultural competency, and the expertise to unpick those traumas, that's when you begin to get the breakthroughs. And the reasons why the women you know, when you look at the domestic violence figures, the deaths somewhat match the suicide rates. So what is happening in those marital situations for the men? They close down, they don't share. And that is the key thing, and the common theme which we're talking about, not sharing and speaking.
And it's interesting you should say that, Daniel, because in my journey, my experience, when I was going through my depression and all the things are coming, I still have to take a trip to Ghana. And in that trip, I realized where our trauma started from. So for example, when the enslaver came and enslaved the land, now you have your woman or your wife or your children, and the enslaver and puts you in shackles, in chains, you know what I mean? You see your family, your girlfriend, your wife, and it happens, and you want to fight for them. You kill and slave, but you can't. You internalize the pain.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You internalize the pain. You can't even afford to cry in front of them. Because they never show you weak.
Yes.
So you internalize the pain. So I believe, like I said, into my journey, when I took that trip, it opened up such an awareness that, yeah, this is where it started. This is how
100%.
this is how we, that's what you just said, in our DNA,
Yes.
through generation.
Yes.
And so we struggle, so we can't talk, we can't tell them how we feel, be vulnerable, because you can't talk in front of like, you know what I mean?
Livingston.
But the people,
Livingston.
for the people that even on the Zoom, there was a great book called The Body Keeps Score. And it talks heavily about epigenetics, the ability for trauma to go through the genetics into generations.
Yeah, man, believe.
And this compounded trauma, we shouldn't really dismiss it, which is, I think, demonstrated when George Floyd was killed. Whereby so many people took up arms because of that compounded trauma again. And so, you know, when we're speaking about mental health, in particular around men, we can't exclude that compounded trauma either. No, for real.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know, one of the books, because the work I've been doing in Hackney, this is what got me to start thinking, and thinking about the work that I do now. And one of the books that I read, a great lady, American lady, Dr. Joy DeGruy, who talks about post-traumatic slave syndrome, yeah, and how that generational trauma passes down, where actually, you know, yes, we were set free, yeah, but there was no therapy, no counseling, so it's passed through generations, you know, and so forth. So when I heard that, and you know, I want to big up my Uncle Patrick, you know, because my Uncle Patrick, yeah, who's from Augustown, Jamaica, I had to then understand, I had to ask him, what was Dad's journey in Jamaica, Augustown? And my uncle told me, he said, Courtney, we've got an uncle, yeah? You see when them called this uncle for your dad, you see when that uncle catch your dad, the way he beat your dad, everybody in the house cried. Everybody cried the way he beat your dad. But you see if your dad got away and hit the gully, and start launch the stones, the boulders at the house, everybody had to run. Okay, so remember, I placed that in my head. Whoa. So when Dad then came to England, he was already angry, especially when I found out that Granddad had gone to America to get a better life. Because I remember my dad said to me, he couldn't beat me like that if my dad was there. So all right, so I'm placing that in my memory now. So then I'm like, I'm working this thing out. That wait a minute then. So he's already got that anger. Then he came to this place in the 60s and 70s. Now he's got the police beating up on him. He's got NFF beating up on him. How was he going to cope with that? Yeah. Plus, remember what I said earlier on with Nathaniel, you referred to culturally competent. So no organizations that look like him back then that he could go and talk to. So he held that all in. Now, hear me very well. I don't condone his behavior. Yeah, because like I said, I had adverse childhood experiences, so the domestic abuse and meant all that, yeah. But I understand the context a little bit more. That's why my organization's here now, Father to Father, which is culturally competent, which is trauma-informed, that has an understanding and can work with men, families, women, children to go through that trauma, especially if you've been traumatized through racism in England. And that's the point. That's what I'm getting at. So yes, I had to do a lot of understanding my dad's journey to be able to be where I am. And as I said, thank God Almighty. But obviously, my thing is then going back, taking the resources that I've got in England and the connections I've got all around the world. I was just in Washington, DC the other day, met up with the top 9 Black politicians who was also talking about mental health. Yeah. And then linking that back into the Caribbean. But my first place I'm going to go to is my dad's hometown, Augustown, while I do the work over here and in Africa as well.
Thank you, Courtney. And being, it's so important that we remember where we came from, because everyone has a journey and it is deeply personal. I know that my personal experiences as a child, when my father would speak with us, myself, my siblings, and I'll just paraphrase how he would deal with us. I think we can all relate to that. Courtney, you said a very important thing there. You know, what you experienced, we cannot carry it with us anymore. We cannot fault our parents.
100.
I know my father raised myself and my siblings the best way he could. He only knew what he knew, as I only know. And given that, it's not about fault or blame. It's
100%.
when we acknowledge what has happened, we can move forward. There's a term I'd like to bring into the discussion now. A colleague of mine, it's quite cynical now they said it, but at the same time it's quite profound. The statement, put simply, is suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. A permanent solution to a temporary problem. Just not right. And thank you. And this is why I want to unpick this statement, because one person can feel in a situation where they feel enough's enough, I'm going to end my life. I can't do this anymore, whatever this is. And they feel that the only way out is to take their life. It's a situation, it's an experience that they're going through, it's a trauma they're carrying. And they feel the only way out is that way.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's a really tricky one, because when you hit it, it's very different when you handle it. Yeah. I remember when I got to such a low place in my life where, I remember I was with family and they started too many voices were speaking to me. And my head was completely filled with so much pressure and stress that I ran out of the house. When I ran out of the house, I was running towards the view carriage. Now, it wasn't because I didn't have the thinking of suicide, but the low position that I was in, it was, I didn't care about my life. Now, the young people that I couldn't meet on the road, the ones that have no love for life, whether they're gonna die or they're gonna kill, it is because they're at that level. I don't say that they are at the point of wanting to commit suicide, but whereby they mental stress has got them to a mental health crisis, whereby they disregard themselves as value. I remember for a long time I had this thing saying it's not about me for a long time, but it wasn't because I was thinking about it's about others, but I was trying to exclude myself from the equation. That's deep mental health issues. And at the time, I just wanted everything to go away. Now, I can understand why many people, when they think about suicide, it can be at that time something that will make the pain leave. But it takes an incredible amount of power and courage to turn around and face the trauma. And a lot of people don't do that. and they don't have the power to turn towards the trauma, which is why they end up going down that way. I would knock down that statement though, because I think if you're telling someone that's at the verge of suicide, that's a solution, that's a very dangerous thing. You know, there are solutions, and you can get yourself to a positive position. But you know, once you begin to do the activities of creative writing, or putting your speech into music, or even listening to music, or reading the books, or visualizations, when you can close your eyes and take yourself to a safe space in your brain and meditate and prayer, you know, and fasting. You know, if you're someone of faith, I'm someone of faith, and so God was a great anchor of support, as well as those people that you can trust. And so it's important that we look at the solutions as opposed to the problem. And suicide is never ever a permanent solution to a temporary problem. That statement.
Again, I really appreciate.
Can I come in there? So I just completed my 2-day assist training. Got it right here, right now. So assist stands for Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training. And and I agree with, obviously it's not a permanent solution, but it goes back to what I said again, based on the training I've just done. When you're speaking to somebody, it's about getting them to, it's about acknowledging where they're at and then taking them through a first aid step so they're safe. Yeah. Acknowledging where they're at, but then taking them on a first aid step by step to ensure they're safe.
Yes.
And that's what the training talks about. Yeah. So one of the things they've got in the training, it says here, connecting with the word suicide. Connecting with suicide. So looking for the invite where you could then put that question to them. And once you put that question to them, then it's about understanding. And what the understanding is about them telling their story and you just listening. And you're just listening. And then once they get through the listening, you then go to the support place, which is about then assisting with life. And then when you're looking at that, you're looking at actually, how can I protect? Have they got tablets? So then you're gradually, because you've built the trust with them now, you're gradually making sure they're moving away from the things that could have caused, that they could think about taking their life. Rope, you understand? And then you signpost them into other organizations. Now they might have built up a trust with you so much, and if you're in that position, they might want you to be the person that go with them. But the key thing is acknowledging where they're at and then taking them on that journey. So the first 24 hours they talk about is ensuring that they're safe. Obviously, if you're you know, in that 24 hours, you call the police straight away, you do the emergency. That's why you're talking about the emergency stuff. But it is clear that's what, obviously, and these are mental health professionals and people that have been doing this over years that's come out of that training. So if anyone wants to know, please get in contact with me. So like I said, here it is, the assist training, 2-day course, very, very, very informative and very, very, it helped me to understand a lot more about suicidal thoughts and so forth as well.
And I just love to about that. If anybody's suffering from mental health that's online, and someone, or even somebody that's dealing with somebody that is suffering from mental health problems, it's not as simple as sort of giving them a psychologist or counselor's number.
Exactly.
Has to be what we refer to in this space as a soft handover, meaning that you would go with them to the appointment. You may even make a call with their permission. You might have to sit with them. You may have to, stay with them along the journey of holding that hand. It's not as simple as just handing over. But what I would recommend is upskill yourself so that you how to deal with at least a low level of trauma-informed practice that helps if you've got somebody that is disclosing very personal, deep information that we think that they're suffering from. that level of mental health crisis.
Thank you. And again, you want to answer that?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because even though I haven't done formal training like we're currently doing on the time there, I have people refer to men in that space. And I have and a friend would recommend myself and I would recommend my book. And then and funny enough, a number of times, but based on my journey and my story in my book, that has helped. You know what I mean? For them to really to start to see that they're not the only one in space.
Yeah.
Because the more time someone else thinks like, well, I'm the only one who's going through what I'm going through. But my book actually helps them to start healing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And signposting, like you said, in terms of finding the additional support, because I love it for cities. You know, I found that initially that the couple of cases that I've had, my book has actually helped to help with healing. You know?
The other thing I want to mention, when I was going through my trauma, I'm known as a motivation speaker. You know, a lot of the quotes I wrote was me speaking back to myself. Yeah. And that was a way which I used to build myself, but now that's actually benefiting me because I've got the support that I wrote during my time of struggling. And you find this oftentimes with musicians. In fact, you know that many of these artists speak about their love relationships and the broken heart and so forth. So they vent this through these forms of creative works. And so through those posts, I've had people reach out to me. And you know, you become an advocate. If you've got through mental health, and you're now in this position, you know, turn that pain into purpose, and reach out via your social media or just something. You're gonna get people. I've had so many inbox messages from men that are fighting for their kids.
I've got a story to share actually. Devin Harris, ex-Olympian for a good friend of mine. And he has a army group made up of 7 soldiers and M7 soldiers. And so what he said, he's gonna he wants me to come and we discuss like this in regards to mental health. And we have this persona, we have this thing about we have them on a pedestal in terms of soldier, they're pretending of man up. I mean, and the story that these soldiers, next soldiers actually shared, I mean, it was bordering on suicide, relationship problems and all that kind of stuff. And then he was in it for 1 session, but we had about 3 or 4 sessions. Because it's almost like permission to talk, to vent, and to find ways of being emotional and vulnerable and healing. And it was so refreshing, because so the concept afterwards, you give the permission to open up and to just be. I said, yeah, because we just haven't had that opportunity, we don't have that chance. And so like you said, I don't know, it is important for us to have that kind of support, and it is then obviously signposted. That's how we can get additional help to enable the healing, to take away from that thought process.
I was going to say, like pretty much like Nathaniel said, it doesn't always have to be a counsellor and everything. And it goes back to what I said, how can I capacity build, or how can we capacity build the community to find healing themselves? So one of the key things, and obviously for all of us, I would say music is the biggest therapy. And that's, as Kwame knows, I created something called Me, My Music and Mental Health. So I have a number of artists who have gone through mental health with the amazing Esther Austin. So a number of artists who have gone through mental health, but they use music as a therapy. And let's not also forget that a trigger to mental health as well, is poverty, lack of money. So these artists, even though they've got, they're going through mental health and everything, they're able to express themselves through music and still make money while they raise the awareness. And that's something that we've started in London. We're going to have a big festival next year. Again, all of the artists are artists that have gone through some type of mental health, but they're coming to perform to raise the awareness, raise the money, so we can do the music therapy sessions that we want to do in schools as well. I was speaking to Kwame about we need to do one in Jamaica. So hurry up and go back to Jamaica and get things started.
What you haven't mentioned about it was the fact that we did have an international discussion and we will be continuing it. And artists that who share, now they're known, so, and I'm sure they would mind of the I said. Gerald Austin from Manhattan and Robert.
Yeah.
We had them on the forum where we're having this same kind of discussion and very open and expressing and talking about vulnerability and talking about being emotional and talking about ways of healing. And it was very, very moving and very a learning process for all of us, but it's a discussion of I think Esther is also looking to do more. So and like I said, we're looking to the big conflict.
Thank you, and thank you collectively. Well, I'm also mindful of this time as well. Time managing. There's a couple of other points I'd like to cover before we then go to the comments in the chat. Should there be any questions or points raised by the audience? However, one of the things that I want to put across here is that anxiety and depression are major contributors to men taking their lives. So we're talking about understanding, supporting. When it comes to someone who's going through a personal challenge, how do you recognize that they're going through these personal challenges? And equally important, in this way yourselves have been seasoned practitioners and experts yourself, including Courtney, how do we engage conversationally? Because I think one of the challenges that many people have is if we feel that we know someone who is perhaps detaching themselves and their actions and behaviors are changing, how do we broach the conversation? Can I go with yourself first of all, and then I'll work through to Courtney and Nathaniel and His Excellency, because ultimately I want to cover all this before we then look at the solutions that we can share before we end the discussion. So,
yeah, for my personal experience, when I was going through my question at the time, it was my cousin who actually saw my on here. So she's the one who raised it. Because what I was saying, my depression was brought up by external factors. And I internalized it with stress and anxiety. So I was in different apartments in North America. Closed windows, you're not talking to anyone, darkness, and just being in that space. I mean, sometimes I go for walks and just talking to myself and just aimlessly, so the behavior that I was doing, I'm not, and she thought it. And she raised it with me. She said, Michael, this is not you, what's going on? Kind of thing. And then it was, and then the other thing what was also happening at the time was the impact I was having in sort of personal relationships. So the ex-girlfriend I had at the time, my sister, my family, all of those things, those negative behaviors are coming up. And I guess one of the things that she did, my cousin said to me, which helped, she said, you know what, there's a black bookstore in Brampton. There's a black bookstore up the road where you can go chill out and read. And it's exactly what I did. I went up to the store, I started reading about myself as an African American. I started reading about our story. And so on the back of that, I went to Africa. All of the face. So and it's not something it's fun, it's a process.
yes.
So it took some time for me to become aware. That we first had to be aware, and then you need to know that there's an issue. And then we move towards the healing and then we can look back and reflect. And my book, My Day with Depression, is basically a reflection of what I had been through at that time. And so the thing is that, as Nathaniel also pointed out, is that when you're going through it, you don't even know you're doing.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Somebody who loves you and somebody who supports you, and somebody who's around you who will highlight it. And then it's a matter of, and even when my cousin highlighted it, there was still behavior that I had. Another girlfriend of mine record counseling, because I had done the work, further on the journey. I'd done the work and I said, yeah man, I'm good. But there were still things that were coming up. Still negative behavior running from discussion or conflict or just having a simple conversation, hiding, those kind of things, and she said, I said, yeah, there's something going on, I don't know what it is, because I didn't. And she was where I go to counseling. And it's when I went to the counseling that helped. That helped to turn everything around, and that helped to turn around me realizing why I was carrying, where I was coming from. So yeah, but one thing I would back up like that Courtney and Nathaniel said, it is about writing. It is about getting, you know, it is about music, and you know, so writing. And so for me, writing is writing. I tend to have workshops and therapy instead of writing and therapy. And to start the healing, to help the healing, you know, kind of does help. So yeah, so in answer to your question, yeah.
That's appreciated again, because you're taking it from a personal perspective and how others got through to you.
Yeah.
That enabled you then
Yeah.
to express, feel,
Yeah.
and
that experience has helped. You know, I see other people. So I see, because sometimes you may get people who aren't open. I mean, they make situations, so you have to find other ways of trying to get this right. You know what I mean? So you have that situation. But it give you that.
And what I also do, and actually segues in Nathaniel, and it comes to yourself, Courtney, of course, and High Commission also. Nathaniel, because with the work that you do, you advise people, you advise individuals in terms of how to engage. So continuing from what Kwame said, what advice would you give in terms of how to engage effectively, sensitively, to enable a person then to open up and express?
A lot of it is just conversation. It's just being genuine, and being real. Sometimes you better give. So to make them feel comfortable. So for example, you know, if we're training the social workers, we're training kids, so we're going to be training frontline youth workers. We always say to give someone more pain, which creates the safe space for communication. The key thing is safety. So for example, the room that you're in, let's say you know, make sure the room is got light, ensure you've got food, drinks, maybe even things that you can play with their hands. You have to create a safe environment. So music is something which is really good, because that releases dopamine, you know, all these hormones which link into mental health. I'm not going to mention too much, but that's a feel good hormones. You know, and that safe space is really important to begin the framework. Body language is key. Looking at lips, not looking at eyes. Yeah, these are other things, all right? Not looking at eyes, but look at the lips first, and then you go and then gently move up the face. The way you sit, all of these things are important, but then it's important that you have to share some of your pain in order to get them on board. If you notice on WhatsApp, if they change their picture, and the picture's been changed frequently, then probably something up. If you see them blank their picture, remove their picture completely, then you know something's up. It's just as simple as asking a question. Are you okay? They might say, why? What are you doing with your picture? You know, sometimes I do that when I feel such and such. So you're offering, you're not really creating any you know, attack towards them or say, you know, why are you moving a picture? You know, is there something wrong? Like, is there no, but you can say sometimes I do that when I feel such and such a way. How do you feel? You know, and if you have that level of rapport, then that person may begin to open up. And so at that point, then you try to create a safe space for them to speak. I'll give an example of an offender who's been using drugs for 12 years. And he'd been made to feel like he was nothing but other offenders. So much so he became heavily depressed and didn't want to leave his cell for association, you know, or for education. What happened was we actually went up to the area and we said we're having a conversation with him. And what we did is we literally took him into a room on the wing and had him close his eyes and then take himself to a place that made him feel safe. So that visualization of taking himself out of the prison into that space was the way in which you created a safe space for him to then start the communication. So if you don't have the ability to create that safe environment, take them to that space in their mind. So,
thank you. Thanks very much. Courtney, coming on that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Personally, again, like I said, when I saw that the white male head teacher pinning down my 6-year-old son. Now, if anybody not knows me, I'm very well kept. trust me, for that 8 weeks, I weren't well kept. I weren't brushing my teeth, weren't combing my, getting my hair cut, crying all the time, you know. So you just see the behavior change. I remember this great man, Peter Isaac, came and sat down with me and my wife. And he said to my wife, tell your husband the changes you've seen, what you've seen. And this time now, I'm thinking I'm protecting the family, innit? I'm thinking nobody knows nothing because I'm trying to control everything. And what I realized, the more I grabbed onto the situation, the more things was just slipping through. I had no control. So my wife said, you know what? I hear him get up at the middle of the night. I hear him go downstairs. I hear him crying. I hear him talking to himself, slamming things. So all of these were the behaviors, what was playing out, depression and anxiety. I didn't trust anybody, you know, lack of sleep, not eating. My enjoyment of going to the gym or even going out and socializing had gone, totally gone. I'm very snappy and erratic as well. So these were all of the signs. And obviously, like I said, once, you know, when my wife said that to me, because like I said, I thought I was being the man. I thought I was protecting my family. I didn't want them to know anything. I needed to control this. I needed to fix this. But like I said, everything was slipping through. So yeah. And I think the key thing as well, when you're doing this work as well, protect yourself. Because one of the things I was doing, so my background is education, 15 years working in secondary schools in Hackney. And even though I was going through that trauma, I still went to school. And guess what happened? I'd see teachers shouting at young black boys. Guess what? That then triggered me, because then I saw my son. Yeah. So I knew straight away I couldn't be in this environment to work, because I was ready to have a go at the teachers, because all I saw was that teacher was that head teacher, because I had internalized the pain. Because all I'm thinking in myself is like, how could I let a next man pin down my 6-year-old son and I didn't do nothing? All I'd done was pick up my son and say to my son, I love you, and a man would never put his hands on you again, and walked out of that school. So I internalized everything. Another time was like, I was just washing the dishes and I closed my eyes. And at that time, there was a lot of deaths in police custody of young black boys. Rushane Charles in Hackney. I saw it and I just screamed. That's when I know I had to go and do the work on myself. So it's all of those things people can pick up in terms of just watching people's behavior. They're not acting how they normally would act. Like Nathaniel said, are you okay? Do you want to talk? But make sure when you ask that question, you've got the time to listen. Yes. And the key thing with listening is listen to understand them, not to see if you're being understood. Right. Understand their journey, their story, and acknowledge it, because it's real for them. And then you take them on that journey, which I explained earlier before.
Thank you, Courtney. And Commissioner, would you like to have anything before we go to questions online?
Just to say that, well, as for the initial intervention, I can't add much to what has already been said. I can appreciate it must be conversation, it must be trying to understand the plight of your friend, you know, the person you're engaged with. But if I might just step away and just look at it from a Jamaican societal perspective. I like to remind people that government cannot provide anything, and charity doesn't do that. In Jamaican society, or also civil society, there are non-state actors and non-governmental organizations that form all sorts of groups, and there are many groups out there that do this kind of intervention from the crises. And now, just about every church, for instance, has an all-male group within the church that reaches out to its members and whoever wishes to engage them to assist them. I can tell you that the government does have a parenting support commission which is, not just for the mother, it's for the father too. Just the father, in whatever trauma the father is engaged with, that is causing problem within the family. The family courts themselves have counselors attached to the family court, where men can also engage those counselors, explain their situation in the custody issue or whatnot. They can engage at that level. So, and then you have service clubs, service clubs that they have all male service clubs out there too, that look toward, look to their own members, and provide that kind of space for them to talk. So that's my contribution, just to say that, there is help out there. I know it is difficult at the initial stage, as somebody with sensitivity and understanding needs to be engaged at the initial stages.
Thank you very much. And that's really important as we're drawing towards a conclusion. The strong message essentially is help does exist. And before one goes to the professionals, there are family members, there are friends, there are associates. And it takes courage to talk. Because when a person's carrying pain, they've internalized it, and often that becomes them, it consumes them. And therefore, those that approach them need to be sensitive enough to enable them to express and feel safe. Courtney mentioned the importance of listening. I remember in my early years of being a coach, active listening is fundamental to what we do, fundamental. And as such, we assure everyone, the viewers online, those who are listening via YouTube elsewhere, that the answers are there, the solutions are there, the support is there. Have the courage to at least ask or be receptive to when a person approaches them. It's not easy, we appreciate that. However, the help and support is there. So if we can now go to the messages online, is it where I'm going to scroll? Or do I go straight from the top?
Yes, go straight from.
So Olive has said, as a woman, what would be the best way to go forward in creating space for men to sit and share in the way you are doing tonight? Form a community engagement stance. And Olive also goes on to say, I also want to acknowledge and say thank you for sharing your vulnerability. And we would like to just respond to it.
A lot of churches struggling for people to come forward to run extra care for the community that they're in. So a protocol that they can look at is directly with reaching out to the local churches to find out if those churches, because they would oftentimes have a venue or maybe a community that you could something like that. Propose to the bishop or the pastor, that you'd like to do this type of forum, and I'm sure they're willing to have that for their members at least. And then if you can start at that, then potentially you're going to bring that bigger community. That's an area that I think we may perhaps utilize to get an area of space.
Yeah, so of that, in terms of, and there's also groups, like men.
Yes.
Student group. Yeah. So there are men groups that here in the UK that are open to supporting, and it's a matter of who they are, who they are and reaching out to them. In the Jamaica context, what we have, the discussion is now happening more in regards to men's mental health and suicide and depression and anxiety. Because in Scotiabank had a podcast called Venture, I think, and recently Minister of Health, Chris Stockton, highlighted the fact about men and mental health. So in the Jamaican context, the discussions are happening. So like I said, me and Courtney are working on an initiative, which we'll get bigger. So we're creating the space for that time, but discussions are happening. So in fact, the Latin American context, and only UK context, there are men groups, in locally, and it's a matter of knowing those groups are. Yeah.
On the, again, on the chat online, just see if there's anything else worth mentioning. Whilst we're scrolling, what I'd like to share is something I was said to me just today, in fact. And I thought it was appropriate that I read it and shared it to the panel and also to the viewers online. It's entitled Anxiety. Anxiety isn't just having trouble breathing. Anxiety is waking up at 3 a.m. from a dead sleep because your heart is racing. Anxiety erupts for no reason. Anxiety is stressing over things that may or may not be real. Anxiety is questioning your faith. How could my Creator allow me to feel this way? Anxiety is calling your sister 3 hours before she gets up to work, hoping that she will respond so that you can stop thinking about the attack. Anxiety is having a shower at 2 a.m. Anxiety is changing your mood in a matter of minutes. Anxiety is an uncontrollable tremor. Anxiety is crying real and painful tears. Anxiety is nauseous. Anxiety is crippling. Anxiety is dark. Anxiety is having to make up an excuse after a behavioral attack. Anxiety is fear. Anxiety is concern. Anxiety is physically and emotionally draining. Anxiety is raw. Anxiety is real. Anxiety is a fight with your spouse, even if you are not angry. Anxiety is breaking you at the slightest annoyance. Anxiety is flashbacks. Anxiety is what if. Anxiety is a lot of what's wrong and I don't know. Your feelings matter. Just because you're upset by something that others do, it doesn't make you crazy or worthless. Some of the most successful people in life have anxiety. This is not your fault. This is not the end. You are strong, you are smart, you are brave, and you are worthy. And I felt that was beautifully put in terms of context for anxiety and depression is. Nathaniel mentioned before about when you are sharing as a public speaker, a number of the quotes that you have put together came through your personal pain, etc. One of the things that I was think about is affirmations. Yes, we have affirmations, many of which we inherited or read. The words that I hold dear personally, my personal reference is simply, if it's to be, it's up to me. I repeat, if it's to be, it's up to me. And before I continue, I want to give the final words out and members, because we're mindful of time.
2 questions from on the YouTube.
Oh my God, just we have 2 questions. Thank you so much. On YouTube.
Yes, we're live streaming on YouTube as well.
Yes,
So we have
thank
Angela,
Let me see. Okay. Firstly, we have persons thanking us. I think we can see both on the chat there and on YouTube for having this session. Interestingly, a lot of them are women, but we are hoping that some men have also been listening in. And one of the ladies is asking, and I think this feeds into something that you all have discussed earlier. Do you not think that men have this stigma around getting counseling? And again, this could stem from conditioning, and I guess in this case, social conditioning.
Courtney, would you like to address that?
100%. 100%. And that goes back to what I was saying, that what we're trying to do within the community is build community resilience, starting with the men. So what I've done, I've created a program which is coming out of the community, and there's no professionals there, but it's building reflective practice, and it's coming from the community of men. It's called Men Chat 2, but chat is an acronym. So the C is men need to connect, men need to be heard, men need to be acknowledged, and that speaks to their emotions and their feelings. As I said earlier, who am I to tell them that what they're feeling is wrong? And the T is men need to talk. It's a 12-week program where men can come in and they chat, and they chat about what's on their mind, and just creating that safe space. And it's a culturally competent safe space with no counselors or therapists. It builds up the resilience in the men. And then if they feel that they're ready to go and take on their own chapter or their own, then we give them the training to be able to facilitate a Men Chat 2 room. It's been commissioned in by NHS, and it's been commissioned in by, at the moment, Haringey Public Health. But I've been very specific to them when I'm speaking to them that you can't heal our community because you don't look like our community. So the only support we want is your funds, but let us do the work. And they've agreed that. So now, hopefully, once we've done this pilot, well, I did it in Hackney already, and I know it works. Haringey's commissioned me in, then we can roll it out. And then it's us, men for men healing men with the training. So they don't have to go into the same institution, unless it's obviously, and I think the other thing as well, in regards to the institutions, that we need more psychotherapists that look like us and counselors that look like us in those institutions. Yeah, but not everybody from our community has the money to do that. And that's one thing Omar is looking at. How can we create CPD training for, somebody like Courtney to get into that? So then they have somebody in those organizations that look like them, that has empathy and understands their journey. But going back to the question, 100%. I've got a saying, do for self.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Courtney. And there's a second.
The second question is, what role are mothers play in terms of protecting or supporting their sons, their brothers, their fathers? And the other part is are mothers part of the problem?
Sometimes mothers are part of the problem. We work with young people on county lines. Sometimes the moms are part of that problem in conditioning the minds of the young people that their dads are dogs. Always speaking negatively about their father figure, and that programs the child. What I say for women that are raising boys, never ever speak down the male people that are in the life of that child, either through the biological dad or even the stepfather. Try to disrespect the man in the household. Keep the arguments away from the children. This is to protect the mind. On average, a child would hear 13 more negative things than one positive thing in the regular normal house. So when you've got a dysfunctional home, you can so it's really important that those role models, those male role models, are established. We've had many parents that have reached out to us to ask for male staff members to work with the boys, and even mentorship from organizations. So if there isn't an uncle or a cousin that can help, then reach out to organizations. My organization is the Safety Box, so people can reach us. We do that one-to-one support, and we do have people that can facilitate that. Also, moms, take your barbershops over the best therapeutic places. Yeah, like the barbershop. You hear conversations, and it's really, sometimes you might even go to the barber and say, look, my son's struggling with this thing. When he's in the chair, maybe open up a conversation. Yeah. So it's being creative and really access as much information. If you're a mother with a child that is male, access as much literature, video content, YouTube, podcast, the information is in the World Wide Web, and it's just for you to take action. That's it.
Thank you. There is.
Listen,
Oh, go ahead, Colin.
I would like to, with respect, challenge the word problem.
Yes.
I don't see it as a problem. I think there's, again, like I always say, what is the understanding? What is the understanding? And so I definitely agree with, because when I think about my mum's journey, obviously my mum needed to protect me and my brother and herself. Obviously, yeah. But I do agree, she never ever spoke badly of my dad. That was my own journey. Yeah. So that's why I always honor my mum. So I think there's something about actually, you know, when we're looking at human beings, whether it's a man or woman, it's the understanding and how do we build healthy relationships? Because we don't know what that woman, that mother's journey was like either, to be at the position where she is now. So I don't see people, whether it's men or women, as problems. It's understanding what was your journey for you to make that decision. And then let's take it from there. Let's unpick it. Yeah, because like I said, the mother could have been traumatized. She could have lived in a house where she saw the same thing. We don't know that. So if we take it from a position of just healthy relationships, and obviously if she's willing, then we work from there. That's how we do it. We work from there. I also agree with the fact that actually if there's not the brother, uncle, and everything, then find organizations that have positive male models, especially male role models that are willing to be vulnerable and have gone on that journey themselves. Because we're human beings. So even if we put on the label professional, you're human beings and you're susceptible to pain, trauma yourself. Have you dealt with it? Because we have to be careful. Because if you're bleeding, you're going to go and bleed on other people. Hurt people, hurt people. So we have to be careful. And then in terms of barbershops, there's a lot of work doing with barbershops around training up barbers to become mental health first aiders. But again, what barbershops are you taking your boys into?
That's right.
So I'll leave it there.
Definitely. That's really important you mentioned that at the end there, Courtney, because there are environments that are quite hostile, meant to be hostile. And therefore we have to be selective in terms of where we go. One of the things I mentioned quickly before we then move on to the other question coming from YouTube, and that is the institutions that we've had at our disposal for so many years that often are overlooked in terms of the solution, and that is the Saturday schools. Saturday schools exist, and part of the development training is not just the essential things that our young people know about their education. It's also an environment where they're mentored positively. They are given positive affirmations that they can own and become a part of who they are as young men and young women. And we have to give a lot of credit to the people behind the Saturday school, many of whom have sacrificed personally to give to these young people. Where some parents can't afford to cover the fees, they give access for free. So we must recognize that there are organizations out there that exist that will help young people, whilst also there are organizations that help mature men. If I go to the question on YouTube.
It's actually a comment, personal comment, but I want to thank all the men who have taken part in this evening's program. And I remember some time back, I watched a program where a young radio TV personality was actually trying to see if he could identify how he could have missed the signs that led to the suicide, to a friend of his committing suicide. And he interviewed different groups of men, young men, some of them as young as 12, 13, who had experienced suicide within their group. And one of the things that stuck with me from one of the groups was when one of the young men said, you know, we do this thing where we meet and we say, how are you? And you just move on. We have learned from this experience that when we say, how are you? And the person says, fine, you then go back and you say, no, but really, how are you? And it can be something as simple as that, that can make that, you know, that person open up and see what's happening. And it just really stuck with me.
And that was the same that we recognize the power of conversational engagement. Back to reference to active listening, and I'm so connected with what you just said, because I listened to the tonality of the voice and how a person or people in general are programmed. So we touch on the reference to NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and how we just run programs all the time. We only know what we know until we unlearn certain things and replace it with more positive references. And the question, how are you, is genuine, it's authentic, it's sincere. We are programmed to say, I'm fine. And then the tone of the voice, I'm fine, tells us so much. And if we have the ability or the desire to question again, as you suggested, it makes all the difference. Can I just ask you to scroll back on the comment, just like, there is one thing here. Life is unspeakably unfair, and the unfairness will always create inadequacies, and not everyone can deal with their inadequacies, and to them, ending life is an answer. How do we deal with this? Again, the person I'm going to say, thank you very much, panel. My friend's son committed suicide 3 weeks ago. And he was 26. And that's absolutely devastating. Colin, would you like to comment on?
One of the things that I learned in some of my journey and helping others is sometimes there's probably that one, who just have made up their mind to do whatever, and no matter what you do, what you try, all the mechanism people think there's, all the support that you want to give, they just made up their mind that it's going to be what they're going to do. And I've seen that, I've experienced that in terms like I said, of just trying to help. And yeah, we can't let it fix, for someone else to react so they behave. And what do we do? It's unfortunate. And with this, again, sometimes I remember there's a celebrity who was wonderful. There was a dancer from Barcelona, to drive, and everyone thought he was happy with his wife and this and everything. And I say, that's all right. I know, and the question was why? The sign went there. He looked like he was happy. In videos, dance and everything else. But nobody, because there was no obvious signs.
Yes. And that in itself is where we find ourselves, and what we're discussing, we've been exploring today, the science. As much as we have seasoned professionals, practitioners, Nathaniel, yourself, we recognize that as much as we believe we know, as much training as we have received, a person who is determined to master, we cannot see beyond that. And the difficulty that many of us have is where we haven't seen through the mask and we have lost that person. We sometimes feel responsible. There's someone whose name I've got mentioned who took their life some 3 years ago now. And that experience for me personally, being on the periphery looking in, was quite devastating. But it's in no way comparison to the people who were directly related to this individual. A mother who asked, why did my daughter do that? I've been here all her life. A father who felt that as the man he has always provided for his daughter, his child, why could she not go to him? A sibling who is close, a cousin who speak regularly, to have had a conversation yesterday and suspected nothing. And then today they get the news that person is no longer here. This has been a very painful discussion. It is a painful journey. And ultimately, we must take from this discussion the fact that suicide is real. And we must never give up in terms of finding solutions, finding ways to communicate, finding ways to facilitate. Because one life lost is one life too many. And I'd like to draw the discussion to a close and give each person an opportunity to speak and share their words that will encourage, inspire, and I trust will touch individuals who are watching this discussion online and give us all a message that we can take away to share and to engage others. So Courtney, as you're online, if I may go to you first, please.
Simple, very simple. Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans of not destruction, but plans of a future and a hope. It's very simple. We all are here, are hope givers. And the more we get this type of message out, this type of forum out, the more lives we can save. Because we're being vulnerable, we're being transparent, and we're being authentic, and we're still here to tell the story. Hope.
Thank you, Courtney.
Important started there. That's where my mind was at too, but there are at least 2 passages in the Bible which essentially say that the Lord never burdens us with too much for us to do. Even though it might seem that he has never, that is a promise he has given to all of us. We will never get everything in life, but we do too much for him to do. With his
Yeah, it's a matter of, it is a journey. It's a matter of getting to the space of having the right support around you, coming to role models, coming to people. It can be feed off that. You know what I mean? It feed off that. Because sometimes when someone's in a space, it's negative. A lot of negativity comes to us, you know. So being in a space that is positive, uplifting, and for the individual to be fulfilled by that, you know. But then, again, as we know, people have they do have a choice, you know. So, but once they can be in that type of environment, hopefully will enable them to, you know, go into and become more aware of the situation of the potential of what can happen, and tell them what they for themselves, you know, and basically, yeah, find a way of the support that is out there, because there is support out there, and find a way of feeling away from it, you know. I would say that, but I feel my book, but I gave depression. I'm gonna go to the things, but I think my depression is my journey of how I get with depression and within it, self-help. And for men in particular, and I have been getting a lot of response from men since it came on a few years ago. And there's a lot more to do with it. So it's my way. And what I have found is that I have been wanting permission for men. So because majority of the time when I do for a lot of men say, oh, you know, you know, and I come and talk and the next person, you know, and open up. So I'm glad that I'm telling my journey that I've been able to put my in this time, you know, and someone, you know. So yeah.
Thank you, Conrad. And Nathaniel, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, again, it goes back to the scriptures. The power of life and death is in the tongue. So I'm gonna get everybody online and in the group to say the following with me. We're gonna speak these words into the atmosphere. Say, my life has purpose.
My life has purpose.
Life has purpose.
Story is important.
My story is
Say my dreams.
My dreams count.
Say my life matters.
My life
Matters.
I was born to make an impact.
I was
I was born to make an impact.
Thank you so much, Nathaniel. And I guess my tuppence worth is simple. Where possible, be authentic. Be your true, authentic self. And as we journey through life, there is one endeavor that I always share when I do my work. And that is, be proud to say these 3 things see me, hear me, feel me. That last reference, feel me, is where a person connects with you. And if one is to be authentic, you have to be true. So I'd like to hand over now to Travis Barrett.
Travis, just before you go, Travis, one thing, all of you invited next week, Friday, International Men's Day celebration. I'm showing my film, Me, My Father and Mental Health. Kwame's going to speak. Livingston and Nathaniel, you're Tottenham man them. It's in Tottenham.
No, if I may say, I thank you for the invitation and I endorse it completely because I know how profound that experience will be. However, I have to excuse myself because my eldest daughter, that is her birthday, and therefore I'll be out of London celebrating that with her. But thank you.
Brother, father to father, take care of the father business first.
There you go. Travis, over to you, sir.
Thank you. The truth is, we could go on and on talking about this very, very important and sensitive topic, but we have to close because we all have, well, you all have homes.
The rest of us do.
I just get to come. Excellency, High Commissioner Alexander Williams, distinguished guests, and speakers, esteemed audience. On this significant occasion commemorating International Men's Day, with a focus on the impactful theme of zero male suicide, I wish to extend on behalf of the Jamaican High Commission sincere appreciation to all present. In particular, I wish to extend our deepest gratitude to this evening's distinguished guests and panelists. Your invaluable contribution have illuminated the critical subject of men's mental health and the imperative mission to eliminate male suicide. Your profound knowledge, expertise, and steadfast commitment to addressing this pressing concern serves a remarkable inspiration. And I was in particular inspired by the personal experiences shared by you all. I acknowledge our attentive audience whose active participation has played a pivotal role in today's event. Your presence, thoughtful inquiries, and dedication to understanding and supporting initiatives aimed at zero male suicide are truly commendable. The significance of this cause underscores the need for collaborative efforts, and your active involvement signifies a remarkable step to fostering a world where mental health support and advocacy for both men and women are prioritized on this specific occasion. Therefore, I charge you to carry forward the conversations and the commitments established today, striving toward a future where the mental health of men receives the attention, care, and support it rightfully merits. Zero male suicide. Thank you.
Thank you. And we now call this discussion to a close. Thank you so much, everybody.
No idea what just happened.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes.
It's not responding to me.